Welcome artists, I'm Garrett and this is GB Brush. If you've been following my other videos, you've seen me maybe do some digital time-lapse videos or maybe give you some tips when it comes to creating your art and stuff like that. But today we are doing something very special. We're starting an art tutorial series. That's right, one day I thought it might be useful to know how to teach art as opposed to know how to just make it. So we're starting with the bare basics, how to draw shapes. First the basic shapes, then the basic shapes in 3D, and then I'll probably draw some kind of illustration where it puts some shapes together so you can kind of see where we're going in this. We're starting with drawing tutorials, but then eventually we'll be moving on into painting tutorials. That's going to be a ways off though, because it takes a long time to film and edit and stuff like that. But I digress. Before we select paper and pencil and stuff like that, the most important question you might be asking yourself is, what watch is Garrett wearing? That's right, my wristwatch check today is my Seiko 5. It was my first automatic watch, kind of World War II Flieger style. It's small, unobtrusive, and on this nice leather strap should be fine for drawing. Let's change perspectives and get into drawing those shapes. This is my first time ever drawing with this situation. You know, I have my drawing board on an angle to give you guys a better view on the camera. I got just a pencil, cheap eraser, an extra piece of paper to put my hand on so that I don't smear things. And I'll also show you guys how you can use this as kind of like a guide or straight edge. And that becomes pretty helpful. So let's just get right into it. When you think shapes, the first thing I think of, I don't know about you guys, would be a square. Now for a square, we're gonna need to learn how to draw straight lines. So some quick tips for drawing straight lines is you want your strokes to go downward. So when you go stroke downward, like so, you can usually get your lines to be pretty straight. Definitely much straighter than if you were to stroke upward. Maybe I'm being a little bit sloppy on purpose, but anyways, you definitely have a little bit more control stroking downwards. Now when it comes to curves, when we get into shapes like the circle or a sphere, you're gonna need to draw curved lines, and curved lines are definitely more tricky. You'll find though that you can make a better curve when you're drawing your curvature, I don't know, kind of away from your hand. So I'm left-handed, so I'm going to be stroking to the right. This is actually kind of backwards from what I'm taught in primary school or elementary school, whatever you guys want to call it, because the English language is right-hand kind of bias. So when you draw letters like, you know, B, well, I guess that one doesn't work, but D, you kind of always stroke backwards, or 0 or S. You always kind of, so I always kind of practice drawing my shapes going backwards, or my curves going backwards. But here we see that you can make slightly more controlled curves when you are going around away from your hand. I hope that makes some sense. So I'm going to erase some of this mess just so I don't have to look at it anymore when we make our shapes. Gotta have a good eraser. So now that we know to stroke down and to do our curves around away from our hand, let's get to it. So let's draw first a square, stroking down. Square is going to have 4 equal sides, as you guys know. Now, if I wasn't filming right now, what I would do is I would turn this paper on its side. That way I could do 2 downstrokes this way, and then I could turn it and I could do 2 downstrokes going that way. When you're drawing, definitely don't be scared to move the paper around. But because I'm drawing for you guys, I'm going to make it a little bit more challenging for myself. All right, so we got ourselves a square, close enough. Now I'm going to use this paper as kind of a guide to put 2 little dots for marking where I'm going to draw my triangle. And you don't need to do this, but this is definitely a little trick I learned when I was in design school. So I put a little dot up there, not to show me where the tip of the triangle is going to be, because otherwise it wouldn't be even, but just to show me how tall my shapes are going to be, because I want it to be relatively the same height as my square. So let's do another downstroke, going this way a little bit. And it's okay to do more than one stroke. I'm kind of doing light strokes and then I'm easing into it. And I'm like doing a couple of light preliminary strokes, and then I use those strokes to kind of find the hidden perfect stroke. Not that these are perfect. I could definitely draw better if I wasn't drawing around a camera. What can I say? All right, so now let's do a circle. Circle, definitely the most challenging shape to draw, especially once you start getting into perspective drawing. Let's see, I put one mark right there for the bottom, one mark up here for the top. All right, so a circle, you can do like a stroke down the middle if you want. That might help you. But the best thing is just to know where you're starting here or here and where you're ending. And then just ease into it, building the line slowly as you go around. And then eventually you'll build up some strokes and you'll find that curve. And yes, it is a little bit tricky. All right, let's see here. I think that's good enough. All right, so we got a square, triangle, and circle. This is 2D, all right? So now let's move down and put these shapes into 3D, okay? So let's draw another square right here. I'm going to start moving a little bit quicker and talking less, because ultimately I don't want this video to take forever. And you guys, I mean, you're all, unless you're in kindergarten, you might get what I'm saying already, and I don't have to explain it too much. And let's do another circle. Drawing around a camera is quite tricky. Okay, so now let's make this three-dimensional. So without talking too much about how to do perspective drawing, let's just get the different planes out of the way. Later on, we're going to do a whole video about perspective drawing, so you can do your 3D shapes definitely much better. But let's just stick to the basics. So for a cube, we're going to have another couple sides to view the shape from. We're going to have our shapes kind of going off and to the right. Should I make this a pyramid? Yeah, let's make it a pyramid. Otherwise, I'd have to draw a circular. If I wanted to make it a cone, I'd have to draw a circular bottom. So make this a pyramid shape. And then, how do you draw a sphere without doing shading? Well, the answer is you can't. I guess what you could do is you could just draw a shadow. That might make it, that might show you that it's a sphere if you draw a circular shadow. We're going to do a whole nother video about actually shading also in the future, so you don't need to worry about it too much, but we'll say our shadow's kind of going forward, so we'll say that the lighting is coming from there. So we'll have some loose shading down here. And it's actually going to be darker, not all the way at the bottom of the sphere, because there's going to be a little bit of reflecting light coming off from the bottom. And I got too much of a line right here for our highlight. All right, so that's just the very basics of shading. And obviously we'll get into shading much more detailed in the future. Now I'm also noticing this line at the top is too hard, too thick and sturdy of a line if we're going to have this shaded. All right, so let's do a cone real quick. Do a cone. And so we'll have a circle at the bottom. Now this is a circle again, but now you're seeing that for when you're drawing a cone, the circle is going to be in perspective. So it's an oval. And this is actually quite difficult to do properly, because just if your oval is off just a little bit, it ruins the whole perspective of your drawing. And let's get rid of this inner line down here. I kind of drew the line on the inside just so I understood the curve better. Because once you understand the curve, you can see if it's wrong or not. All right, and let's put a little bit of a shadow here. Shadows are really elevate any kind of drawing, just to have a shadow, because all of a sudden it becomes three-dimensional. And this is not my best shadow by any stretch of the imagination. All right, so we got our, okay, since I already kind of shaded these two, let's just add a little bit of shading, just a wee bit. It's too fun. It's too fun to add shading to just a couple shapes and then leave the other couple shapes hanging. Don't you agree? If I have to, I'll just speed this up in like a quick time lapse so that you guys don't have to listen to me ramble too much about nonsense like my watches, which, gotta say, am a fan of Seiko these days, putting out a lot of really good pieces. People are counting Seiko out. They're saying it's an entry-level brand. Nuh-uh, I say historic brand. And I'm not from Switzerland, so I'm not necessarily loyal to the Swiss. My perspective on my shading's wrong. You got your shadow needs to follow the perspective also, so I did that wrong. So gotta fix it. Okay, so now over here, I'll put all of these shapes together to create, I don't know, one of my favorite little tools, an hourglass. Got to keep that time. It's not as good as my Seiko 5, but an hourglass, you know, got humanity pretty far. So let's draw a nice hourglass over here. So as I start drawing the basic shapes and outlines of this hourglass, notice how the top of the hourglass, the curvature of the oval is going to be going up, and at the bottom the curvature of the oval is going to be going down. That's because my center line, or my horizon, is going to be right in the middle. All of this will be discussed in greater detail when I do a video about perspective drawing, all right? But for now, you can just sit back and watch a time lapse as I just put some of these shapes together in perspective, or at least in basic perspective, and show you guys a simple drawing, all right? So let's do that. All right, well, we got it. Not my best drawing or anything like that, but certainly one that at least demonstrates how you can use the different shapes. So as you can see here, when I drew my circle, I used a lot of guides. I found myself using a lot of guides when I drew this guy here because an hourglass, I haven't drawn many hourglasses before. I just decided to draw an hourglass in this demonstration because I might be drawing an hourglass in one of my upcoming paintings. I just see mistakes here and I feel like retouching it while I'm talking to you guys. But I found myself, because an hourglass is symmetrical, I found myself using a lot of guide marks as I drew this one in particular. So I used these circles as like a centerline guide. I used the center to guide how big these domes are going to be. So be sure to use those tricks, the downward strokes, the outward curves, and then also the guide dots for measuring your illustrations. If you like the content, give us a like. Definitely helps share the video out there. Leave me a comment on any kind of tutorials you want me to start thinking about doing besides drawing in perspective or the shading tutorial. Give me some extra tips, and as always, I'm always happy to hear feedback from you guys. So anyways, with that, I'll leave it. Bye bye.